All right. Hey, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Are you really? Which one was it?
Shane.
Nice. You should get him to read "Riders of the Purple Sage" by Zane Grey. Zane Grey was an avid fisherman and claims to have seen a megalodon back in the 1940s or 50s. Yeah, he was on a yacht off the coast of Australia with his son. It's crazy.
Somehow, not U.S. It's Australia though.
It's Australia.
Yeah.
Everything in Australia is bred to kill and poison and injure human beings in every sense of the word. All right.
Birds.
Dude, birds are the worst. Like,
Cassowaries are the neatest bird on the planet.
cassowaries are the most deadly bird on the planet.
Yeah, I know.
They're like velociraptors.
We were warned when we were there. you see a cassowary,
Run.
No, you don't run. You charge it.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, you don't run from the cassowary because it will chase you down.
Dad, take out your BB gun.
Yeah, BB gun is not going to do a
It's
thing.
just gonna make it angry.
Dude, we're talking about the same country where the army lost 20,000 rounds. Well, no, 100,000 rounds
To kill 12 emu.
to kill 12 emu out of an army of 20,000. It's called the Great Emu War of the 1930s.
Yeah, it was like the most humiliating experience.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious too.
It's a great thing to read. It's like, yeah.
All right. Hey, Sean, would you do me a favor and hit the light for me, since you're right there? All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the writing workshop. We're talking about writing thrillers today. And I do have YouTube going, so we're live streaming this for anybody who's not able to tune in. So, coolio. All right, so here is our agenda for the day. We're gonna, I'll do a brief introduction, which at least most of you who are here who know me. We'll talk about the history of suspense and thrillers. We'll talk about the subgenres. We'll talk about the anatomy of what a thriller looks like and how it's structured. 8 things that every thriller should include, and then 7 tips for writing it, and then there's a prompt at the very end. So stick around for that because it's going to be fun. You'll get a chance to share out whatever it is that you're working on. So a little about me. I am a local author and podcast host. My background is in creative writing. And then I have a couple of podcasts, multiple titles first and foremost. My newest one, Midnight Playground, is an anthology of short stories that just came out 2 months ago. And then I'm on the Storytellers podcast, War of the Stars, and another podcast that comes out once a month called Snackame, where we eat snacks and we talk anime. And then I have my channel on YouTube, The Right Way, and my favorite genre is usually science fiction, but I've been getting into thriller and suspense more and more over the last few years, to the point where, like, just the other day I started reading through it's a collection of H.P. Lovecraft. So that's kind of messing with my head right now too. So, thrilling history. Thrillers have existed throughout history, but the term is a modern concept. Some of the first thrillers include Homer's The Odyssey, which has a thriller vibe to it because you don't know what's going to happen as they go from one location to the next over the course of 10 years on their way back to Greece after the Trojan War. Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo is also a thriller. It's an incredible thriller because you don't know if he's going to break out of prison, you don't know if he's going to get revenge. There's this tension between should he seek revenge and retribution, or should he forgive his best friend who betrayed him and sent him off to the worst prison in France. The term thriller didn't come into popular use until around 1889. So this has only been around for a little over 100 years, this idea of the thriller. The modern genre has its roots in Gothic and sensationist novels of the Victorian era. So the Victorian era is like the 1850s to the 1890s going into the turn of the century. It really picks up. In fact, it might actually go back a little bit further, because if you go to the 1830s, that's when we get our real first thriller, our real first vibe with science fiction in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And that kind of created the subgenre of science fiction thrillers that we'll be talking about here in just a moment. Now, suspenseful subgenres. The first one we're going to talk about is psychological thrillers. These delve into the minds and the behaviors of the characters. This is very character-driven storytelling. It's marked by plot twists, inner conflict, and unreliable narrators. Okay? You want to take a look at something like Psycho. Psycho is a quintessential psychological thriller, because when you are introduced to Norman Bates, when he starts telling his side of things, he is an unreliable narrator. He seems like this quiet, calm, very reserved guy, and beneath it is the heart of a monster who has done some awful, terrible things. Okay? Psychological thrillers are a mainstay in the genre right now. In fact, most of your true crime podcasts, your true crime books, anything along those lines, usually have some kind of psychological element at work. If you've ever seen it is Criminal Minds. Criminal Minds delved deeply into the psychological mindset of the criminals that they were trying to stop, because the team that you have as your main set of characters is the FBI's Behavior Analysis Unit, the BAU. All right? These are what we call profilers. Okay? One of my favorites, it's a crummy slasher flick disguised as a psychological thriller, but it stars the late great Val Kilmer. It's called Mindhunter. It's called Mindhunter, and it has a really interesting cast, including Christian Slater. And it's about a team of profilers who are training with the FBI, and they go for one last big test on this facility island that the FBI has off the coast of Roanoke, Virginia, and the whole thing turns into a death trap because one of their own members is a killer, is a serial killer. So there's a huge, and so they're sitting there trying to identify the psychology of the character. Next one we have is action thrillers. These are focused more on action and a protagonist facing against dangerous obstacles and situations. Think Die Hard. Okay? Think maybe Running Man. Well, that's more sci-fi than anything else. But anytime you have an action-oriented story where the characters are in grave peril at any given time, and you have a core heroic protagonist, that's your action thriller. Okay, the cool thing about Die Hard is that, for example, is that John McClane is kind of this everyman character. Yes?
Like Batman?
No. Batman is more, he's a hero, but he's more of an anti-hero. There is an action thriller component to it, but Batman actually crosses multiple thriller genres. All right, we'll kind of talk about that in just a moment. But with John McClane he's an action hero, but he doesn't want to be there. He's not throwing himself into the situation because he wants to, or he just feels connected to it. He's there because he went to go visit his estranged wife, trying to prevent the divorce from happening. She's in LA, he's from New York, and everything that happens to him goes from bad to worse because of decisions he makes based on the action that he is dealing with. All right? And every set piece gets bigger and more bombastic. All right? Now, the trick is with action thrillers is that you don't want to go too bombastic, because if you do, then it becomes unbelievable. You want situations where the characters can operate within that seem plausible. The next one is crime thrillers. This is less action focused and more character focused, with an emphasis on crime and high stakes and risk. Think Ocean's 11. While there's some comedic elements to it, it is a crime thriller because the whole point is that the protagonists aren't exactly heroes. They're not heroic characters. They're actually breaking the law. They're committing a crime by robbing a casino. And the reason why they're robbing that casino is because the guy that owns the casino is stooping George Clooney's ex-wife. And he wants to get her back after spending years in prison. So it's more about what they're doing, their choices, the crime itself, and the high stakes and the high risk. All right? And if your crime thriller is done well, then it works and it's very fun. Another great example of a crime thriller, if you're thinking film, is The Italian Job, starring Mark Wahlberg. It starts with the crime. They get betrayed by one of their own, and then they have to go and steal back the gold that he helped them steal at the very beginning. Great movie, a lot of fun, a little bit of humor, and it is enjoyable because you're not sure how they're going to get away with it. The next one is a political thriller. Political thrillers, these can have a couple of different facets. So it's focused on characters involved in politics and the decisions they make to avoid war, defeat corruption, or prevent acts of terrorism. Think Hunt for Red October, okay, or anything written by Tom Clancy ever. The Hunt for Red October is a great example of a political thriller because it's set during the height of the Cold War in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and the Russians have built this brand new submarine called the Red October, which is a stealth missile submarine. When I say stealth, it's not just that it's underwater most of the time. It has a special brand new propulsion system that makes it go invisible to sonar. It sounds like magnet displacement or some other kind of geological event, and it confuses the heck out of sonar systems, which allows them to get within striking distance of the United States. The fun thing is that the captain of the ship and his officers are trying to defect to the United States because they're done with the whole Soviet thing. And Jack Ryan, who's the protagonist of it, he is having to make decisions in convincing the president and the DOD to listen to him to avoid war and to prevent a potential act of terrorism. Let me know if I'm going too fast or if you've got any questions. We good? All right. Our next one, mystery thrillers. This is one we're going to touch on in more detail next month. And there's, in fact, on the back table, there is a little slip with the date and everything for next month's writing workshop. But this combines elements from detective stories and thrillers focused on suspense, action, and uncovering clues. Okay, a good mystery thriller at its heart is a detective story. It doesn't matter if it's focused on, say, an archaeological mystery, or if it's a crime mystery, like a murder mystery, whodunit. It's going to combine those elements. You're going to have a character who operates as a detective in some way, shape, or form. A great example of this is the Da Vinci Code, where, in fact, there's a line in the film, I don't remember if it's in the book or not, but Robert Langston, who is played by Tom Hanks, he talks about how one of the characters who was killed at the beginning of the book referred to him as a flatfoot of history. Yes?
What about the movie Clue? Is that a mystery?
It is. It's more comedy because of the situation. It's dark comedy, but yes, it is a mystery thriller. I'm so glad that you know Clue. Because yes, Clue is a murder mystery. It's a mystery thriller. It does have suspenseful moments. It has some action, and it's about uncovering the clues. In fact, if you watch Clue frequently enough, you can actually tell when one of the characters is out of the room to commit a murder. If you pay attention, you can see who is missing from a shot, thus necessitating the death of one of the victims. Was that a hand, James? Okay. Mystery thrillers can be a lot of fun because you can play around with it. You can have different elements. It can be historical. You can have something set in the modern day. It's completely up to you. All right? But you want your characters following clues. And we'll talk about this more next month, but one of the things, if you are going to write something with a mystery thriller element to it, set those clues up in advance. Like, know how it's supposed to end, and set those clues in reverse order so that they can be followed in a logical sequence. All right? Legal thrillers. These stories focus on the legal system, often featuring judges, lawyers, or jury members as main characters. One of my favorite go-to references for this is John Grisham's The Firm. They made a film of it back in the 1990s with Tom Cruise and Gene Hackman, rest his soul. And it's about this, this law firm in Memphis, Tennessee that is involved in some heavy, heavy illegal stuff. And they will actually stop at nothing, including killing their own associates and partners to make it happen. It is a very intense story. In fact, most of John Grisham's work is focused on legal thrillers of one kind or another. So pay attention to that. The next one, sci-fi thriller. This is another blend of genres. Its focus is more on speculative ideas of technology gone wrong and the impact of tech on society. You see this a lot in cyberpunk. You see this a lot in other types of thrillers. My go-to on this one is Jurassic Park. Because Jurassic Park is all about the idea of technology gone wrong. They have this brand new technology, genetics technology, cloning. And they think they've got all control. But if you actually pay attention to the things that Ian Malcolm says, this is the Jeff Goldblum character from the movie, Ian Malcolm makes all these assertions about how they think they're in control. The park thinks that they can handle everything. And the one thing that they can't really account for, they cannot account for the human component. Because that's where things go haywire. Because Dennis Nedry is human. He is greedy. He is broke. He wants money. And Biosyn, InGen's #1 competitor for the genetics research that the company is doing behind Jurassic Park, they are paying him a buttload of money to smuggle embryos out of the park and get it to the doc so that they can steal the technology and they can market it first. Because if they can do it before Jurassic Park opens, InGen has no claim to the technology. So there's a criminal thriller element to it, but there's a sci-fi thriller because of the science. And the cool thing is that Michael Crichton, who authored that book, and who was one of the executive producers behind the film, he was a medical doctor. He knew his science. He knew the research. He did extensive research and reading to make sure that what he was talking about was plausible for the time. It's even more plausible now that we've been hearing about the idea of de-extinctifying the direwolf. It's not really a direwolf, it's just a gray wolf with direwolf traits blended into it. So it's not a true direwolf. But we're seeing those things happening now. And again, what happens when we botch that up and the technology goes wrong? All right, so here's the anatomy of the thriller. There's 3 things I want you guys to focus on. 3 C's that you need to focus on. Okay, here are the 3 C's of the thriller anatomy. First is the contract. This is an implied promise to it should be reader, not raider, to the reader about what will be delivered by the end. It's crucial to keep every promise you make, no matter how trivial it is. Okay? Whether it is a promise to reveal who the killer is, whether it's a promise to reveal all the clues and how everything lines up, whether it's about resolving a subplot involving the protagonist and the person that they love. Because one of the things that keeps happening, going back to Die Hard, is that the whole purpose of John McClane's visit to Los Angeles is to reconcile with his wife and to fix their marriage. And she is stuck in the middle of a hostage situation, and he actually has to save her at the very end. And it creates a nice little trauma bond for a moment, where they get back together, they kiss, they're back in love. But the start of the next movie, they're kind of separated. She's on a plane. He's waiting for her to arrive because they got split in their Christmas travels. And he's trying to figure it all out and gets himself stuck in another hostage situation at the airport. It just repeats itself. It's like he's a magnet for these kinds of things. Me personally, I kind of skip part 2 and just go straight to Die Hard with a Vengeance because it's a more clear-cut storyline and I ignore all the rest. But the promise is made that he has got to reconcile things with his wife. That contract is completed at the end of the film. All right, the second C is the clock. Okay? Adding a time pressure to any character struggle will create higher stakes and more interest to the reader. It prompts conflicts and intense character responses. What this does is it ratchets up the tension. Okay? So here's something for you. If I tell you there's a bomb in a scene, and the characters have to leave a room before the bomb goes off, and they can see the bomb, how much tension does that create? How much suspense does that build? None. Because they can see the bomb, they're like, oh, it's a bomb, and they walk out. Nothing. But if you, the audience, knows there is a bomb hidden inside my iPad, and you don't, and I don't know it's there, and I go and I'm starting to use my iPad, you guys know that anything I do on that iPad could trigger that bomb remotely. You're just waiting. That tension is building. The suspense is building. And then if it doesn't go off, you're kind of left wondering, well, why didn't the bomb go off? But if it does, that tension is broken and you get the resolution. Yes, James?
There's a bomb in there, can I go?
No. No, you actually have to duct tape it to yourself before you leave. I'm
How are
kidding.
you going to do that?
I've got a roll of duct tape.
No. How are you going to...
Should stop. So what that ticking clock does is it creates a situation where your characters have to make decisions. It puts them into a crunch. If they cannot make a decision before the end of such and such time, they're screwed. Okay? Any questions? Yeah.
I was wondering if in a movie like Speed, does the speedometer act as the clock in that movie a little bit?
The speedometer does act as the ticking clock because that's why there's so many shots of the camera cutting to the speedometer, but or when they see the number gauge on the bomb itself underneath, but the ticking clock goes into rapid fire when they strike the fuel line and when they're trying to get people off the bus, or it's when Keanu Reeves is under the bus trying to check out the bomb and get a read on it, and he accidentally catches himself and accidentally cuts the fuel line. So now they're leaking fuel, and if they run out of fuel, the bus stops. And if the bus stops, kaboom. So yeah, so that is a great example of a ticking clock. So it doesn't actually have to be a clock. You can have something else function in that realm. But so long as it creates a time crunch. Your third C, this is the crucible. Okay? Now, the idea of a crucible is a container in which a piece of metal is placed, and then that whole thing is put into a furnace to melt it down and remove impurities. Then you pull the crucible out, you uncap it, you remove the impurities, you put it back in for more time to get the remaining impurities out. What the Crucible does for your character is it creates a constraint on your characters, offering no escape, and it forces them to act. Okay? Each successive task becomes harder or more complicated. So I wanna go with Jurassic Park on this one. Your Crucible, the Crucible that is faced is specifically with Alan Grant. Dr. Alan Grant is forced to take care of the children by himself. One, he's uncomfortable around children, at least in the film. In the book, he's fine with kids. He's actually a natural leader, natural father figure. But in the film, he is uncomfortable with kids. So being around kids is not his strong suit. He prefers adults. Okay? He has nobody else to help him because Donald Gennaro, the lawyer, got eaten in half by the T-Rex. Ian Malcolm got pummeled by the T-Rex and thrown into a building. So he has no other adults to work with, so he has to rescue them. He pulls Lex, the girl, out from the truck. The first thing she does is scream, which attracts the T-Rex back to him. And he's just like, don't move. He's holding her mouth shut. He's just holding her still because if they move, the T-Rex is going to eat them. T-Rex eventually goes away. So then they have to, but it doesn't really go away because it starts messing with the truck, trying to get them to move because it knows they're there. It can smell them. It just can't figure out where exactly they are because their scent is all over the place. So it starts moving the truck with its snout, trying to get them to move, trying to get them to make sound, which creates more tension, creates decisions that they have to do. The only way, they can't go running because this thing is faster than them. It'll take them down in a heartbeat. So what's the only thing left for them to do? They have to go over the ledge and start climbing down. But the T-Rex starts pushing the truck over the ledge and they almost get hit by it. Meanwhile, Lex's brother Tim is still in the truck and they haven't been able to get him out. And he doesn't come out until the truck is stuck in a tree, and then they have to climb down the tree while the truck is falling down on top of them. That's a crucible. Decisions have to be made. Risks have to be had. Everything becomes harder and more complicated. Because then Alan Grant treks across the island back to the visitor center, having no real direction of where they're supposed to be going. This is a huge island. And in the midst of it, there's all these dinosaurs running amok. And one of the biggest obstacles that they have to come to is the electrified fence, right when everything's getting powered back up. And as soon as that timer, or as soon as the alarm goes off, notifying that the power is coming back on, that puts them in a number crunch. That puts them on a clock to get over the fence and get away from it before they get zapped. And unfortunately, Tim gets zapped. He gets turned into a human piece of toast. And just when they think they're safe at the visitor center, the raptors show up. Because the raptors were let out. Everything becomes harder for the characters. The characters have to make decisions. All right? So those are your 3 C's. The contract, the clock, the crucible. Those are the 3 anatomy pieces that should be the core of every thriller. Now, here's a quote from James Patterson. I'm not a big fan of James Patterson. I've read a couple of his books. But he says, ultimately, a great thriller is a roller coaster ride. And that's what you want the emotions to feel like. You want there to be some relief, but you also want to ratchet up that tension as much as you possibly can before the relief. Because then the relief feels cathartic. It feels like you get the release that you need. All right? Now, here's 8 things every thriller needs. The first one is an element of suspense. I've mentioned suspense a number of times already. All right? This is about controlling information, how much you reveal, and when and how you reveal it. The tension is built on smaller moments that ratchet up the suspense. Okay? So, by far, one of the most suspenseful things, I'm jumping back to Jurassic Park. I was 11 when Jurassic Park came out to theaters. I was 11. I went to go see it twice. That's how much I love this movie. And even the second time, when that raptor falls onto the ground in the computer room and then jumps back up trying to catch a hold of Lex as she's scrambling back into the ceiling tiles, it makes me flinch. Even now, more than 30 years later, I flinch. Why? because it ratchets up the tension, because we know how powerful these things are, we know how dangerous they are, we know how smart they are. And there's nothing scarier than a smart, dangerous creature. Okay? That element of suspense is all about what you reveal, when you do it, and how you do it. Think about Jaws. Okay? Jaws is a thriller. It's a sci-fi thriller because great white sharks don't really get that big. They could, potentially, but they don't usually. All right? I want you guys to think about it. What makes Jaws so suspenseful? Have you seen it?
I wanted to.
Okay.
Never showing the shark.
Bingo.
Later.
Bingo. You never see the shark.
Did you see like a really big fight?
Sometimes you see someone thrashing around in the water. Sometimes you might see a fin. But you never see the shark's whole body until towards the end of the film. What you see most of the time is an underwater camera shot filming, and you hear the suspenseful music. Okay? That is what's playing. Because what is less seen is more terrifying, more suspenseful than what is actually seen on screen. Okay? One of my favorite sci-fi thriller horror films is Alien. Okay? Alien is a slasher movie in space, essentially. And what makes it so terrifying is that you do not see the alien you don't see anything alien for the first 30 to 40 minutes of the film. And then it goes away. And then it comes back, and it's in a different form. And then it runs off. And then they spend the next 15 minutes trying to find it in film time. And when they do find it, it is so much worse because it comes out of nowhere. It blends in with the design of the ship. It blends in with the shadows. One of my favorite scenes from the entire original film is the scene where Sigourney Weaver is on the escape pod. She's already left the Nostromo. It's already blown up. She thinks she has killed this thing. And what ends up happening is she's sitting there programming in her destination, and its hand drops out of a compartment and scares the bejesus out of her. Now, here's why this is so suspenseful. Is because this is where you actually get the secret fourth act. Okay? She thinks she has killed the alien. And in fact, she has not. It escaped on her escape pod. But not only that, it's hiding in the bulkhead because it blends in seamlessly. In fact, it's there in the shot. Every time she walks by that console, it is there. And Ridley Scott specifically set up that scene without telling Sigourney Weaver what was going to happen. He just said, you're going to see the alien. She's sitting there working on the console, and he says, action. And then all of a sudden that hand pops out. And her scream, the way she reacts on camera, was legitimate. Because she was not expecting it. And that makes it more suspenseful for the audience. Okay? So you want to be able to ratchet up that tension. Number 2, you need a hero. Your main character should be someone the reader roots for. Whether this is John McClane, or Danny Ocean, or Alan Grant and the kids. You need a hero. But they don't have to be a traditional hero. Okay? Danny Ocean from Ocean's 11 is not a traditional hero. He's not a good guy. He's a criminal. He is a robber. He's a thief. Okay? Heroes are forged by the trials that they encounter. Maybe it's a character who's a reluctant hero like John McClane. John McClane doesn't want to get involved, but he has to because his wife is involved in the situation, and he wants to protect her. And he's got, even though he's not a police officer in California, he has a responsibility as a cop to protect and serve. Okay, so you need to have a hero. What kind of hero you develop, that's completely up to you. Are we good, or? Okay. Number 3, you need a sidekick. This is a secondary character helping the reader understand the hero's strengths and motivations. It could be a mentor, it could be a friend, a helper, it could even be a romantic interest. Yes?
Does the hero have to be like the main character in the story?
Typically. You want to be the character that's most involved, you want to follow them. Alright? But the hero doesn't necessarily have to be the hero. They might be the hero of their story. So case in point, I was listening to an audiobook last year called The Method. It's a full cast audio drama with Zachary Quinto, who played Spock in the more recent Star Trek films. And he plays this actor. He used to be a kid actor on a TV show, and then he lost his brother in an accident, and he kind of stepped away from the limelight, and now he's back. And after doing all these bit parts and stuff like that, he gets cast as the lead in a crime thriller drama being made for cable. And the character that he's playing is a historical in this universe, historical serial killer. He starts getting into this method acting, and it starts messing with his psychology to the point where he becomes the serial killer. He starts having people refer to him by character name only. He only responds by character name. And you see this happen with actors. Okay, you see this happen in Hollywood. Like before Marty McFly was played by Michael J. Fox on Back to the Future, it was actually Eric Stoltz. And Eric Stoltz was so into character, he wanted everybody to refer to him as Marty. Like, he would actively instigate fights with Tom Wilson, who played Biff Tannen. And Tom Wilson's actually not a jerk. He's actually a really nice guy. He's really funny. But that was the character he was playing, and he knew how to separate himself. Eric Stoltz did not. He was getting so invested in the character that he was trying to instigate fights. And after 2 months of shooting, they fired him. When they did fire him, they went and told Christopher Lloyd, who played Doc Brown, that, hey, we fired Eric. He's like, who's Eric? I always thought his name was Marty. Because he never went by his real name. And for a while, Eric Stoltz was unemployable as an actor. That's changed because I guess he's learned his lesson. But you can see how that psychology messes with people. So you can play around with the hero character. But let's get back on the sidekick, because I'm getting sidetracked. This secondary character is going to be helping them. So when I think of this kind of a thing with thrillers, I'm going to jump back to Die Hard. John McClane has 2 sidekicks. He has his limo driver, Argyle, who kind of helps him out a little bit. But then he's got the police officer, and I cannot remember the officer's name in the film, but the actor's name is Reginald Vell-Johnson, who played Carl Winslow in Family Matters. He also played a police officer in Ghostbusters. And they, especially their relationship, because they're talking over walkie-talkies with one another on the police band, and they're offering insight, and they're trying to counsel each other, because the reason why Carl Winslow isn't active on the force, he's sitting a desk job, is because he shot a kid while on patrol. And the kid wasn't actually armed. And so this has been messing with him. He hasn't fired his gun in years. And this is, again, part of the contract, is that he then, at the end, fires his gun for the first time in years to protect John McClane. But they understand each other's strengths and motivations, and they're able to mentor each other. And so they have that helping relationship. Your third component is a villain. You need a villain. This is a defining force antagonizing your hero. The villain's motivations create the crisis for the hero, usually introduced with a clear message that they are the bad guy. Okay? In this case, Hans Gruber from Die Hard. Alan Rickman's character. He is the defining force antagonizing everything in John McClane's world. He shows up with a bunch of mercenaries, mostly Germans, because he himself is a German character. He shows up, they invade the Nakatomi Plaza, they get access to the computers, they get access to security, they get access to the vault, everything. They are shooting people, they're creating a terrifying atmosphere. They are clearly the bad guy, but he is so much fun to watch. We know he's the bad guy, and while we want to root for John McClane, there's something that draws us to him because his motivations are actually really pure. His motivations, he's a thief. He's not a murderer, he's not a terrorist, he's a thief. And what he wants is to steal money from Nakatomi Plaza because this money was ill-begotten gains in some way, shape, or form, according to him. Okay? But it creates a crisis because John McClane really doesn't want to get involved with anything. He's trying to avoid people at this Christmas party because he doesn't know these people. They're all schlubs for him. And it creates a situation where he has to confront the bad guy. Number 5. Plot twists. Don't go out of your way to mislead or deceive your reader. But you do want to keep them on their toes with something unexpected. The best way that you could access or do a plot twist is to do something that is on the surface unexpected. You can lay the groundwork and the clues for it early on, but then pull the rug out from underneath them. So a great way to do the plot twist is, I'm jumping back to Clue, is the fact that all these people, all these characters, Mr. Green, Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum, all of them are invited to Mr. Body's home for a dinner party. That's all they think it is. But as they start meeting each other, we get a little bit of a plot twist. They're all there because they're being blackmailed, every single one of them, by Mr. Body. And then Mr. Body explains even further why they're being blackmailed. And he gives them weapons. He tells them, kill Wadsworth. He's really a bad guy. But because Wadsworth has been innocent, we don't consider Wadsworth to be the bad guy. He's been helping them. Okay, and then you start going through all the misadventures, trying to track down all the clues. All these other characters are dying off one at a time. And nobody has figured out how they're all connected. And then we get the various endings. There's 3 major endings. I personally think the one where Wadsworth is the one holding the revolver at the end is really the true ending, because I think they were all guilty of killing somebody at some point. But we are told early on, Wadsworth is the bad guy. But everything that we see him do is all misdirection. It's all a plot twist. Until at the very end, when we see how it really ended, and he's the one left holding the gun, and then Mr. Green shoots him. That's the plot twist. What's really funny is in that plot twist, we're told early on that Mr. Green is gay. And that, because at the time, that, in the 1950s, that's not a very good thing to be. But at the end, he's like, I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife. And everyone's like, wait, what? He's got a wife? Plot twist. And all it is a piece of dialogue. So how the plot twist threaded, you can thread it throughout and leave clues towards it, but have it happen. The next thing you want to include is red herrings. Now, we talked about this a couple months ago in a previous writing workshop where we talked about foreshadowing and red herrings. Red herrings, these are hints of an explanation that may not be true, and they get the reader to believe a false conclusion so that they will be surprised by the truth and will enjoy the misdirection. I've been watching through a series called Invincible on Amazon Prime. It's based on a graphic novel series, and there is a murder mystery at the heart of season 1. This group of superheroes called the Global Guardians, or Guardians of the Globe, they are killed. Now you know, as the audience, who killed them. question is why? That information doesn't come until the very end. Because you're told that the killer was sent to Earth by his people to help, to make the universe and make the galaxy a safer, better place. And that's great because he spends 20 years as a superhero on Earth saving people from natural disasters, from wars, from terrorism, from kaiju. He spends 20 years saving people, building a family, living in the suburbs, living as a human. That's the red herring. That's the trick. That's the deception. Because really, the reason he is there is he is here on Earth to be a conqueror. He is the invading force. And there's nothing on Earth that can stop him. One guy, he moves so fast, he is so strong, he is so powerful, he could wipe out every nuclear arsenal just by taking the brunt of the explosions. Everything else gets decimated, he's left standing. So you want to have that misdirection. You want to have something, especially if you're writing a mystery thriller, you want those red herrings. You want to misdirect. You don't want to lie. You don't want to deceive your audience, but you want them to get thinking in a different conclusion. That way, when the real conclusion happens, it becomes a plot twist. One of my favorite thrillers of all time is The Prestige, starring Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. It's about two stage magicians who are competing against one another to be the best. And they talk about the structure of every magic trick in the film a couple of times, and you actually see it play out on screen. They say, just like with a thriller, you have the 3 C's. There's the pledge, the turn, and the prestige. Those are the 3 components of the magic trick. The pledge is where you show something honest, very simple, very basic. The turn is where you make it do something extraordinary. And the prestige is where you make that extraordinary thing revert back to its original form. Yeah?
Have you read the book The Locked Door?
Have not. But that same structure goes into play because every single one of those turns is a plot twist or a red herring. One of the things that, like Hugh Jackman, his character absolutely believes that that Alfred can't remember his last name, but he absolutely believes he's dealing with one guy the entire time. Come to find out, he's dealing with twins who are living the same life. The clues are all there. There's just a lot of misdirection. The next one is cliffhangers. Number 7, cliffhangers. These are sudden stops during a climactic event midway through the action. Stopping there and switching scenes keeps readers invested in what's going to happen next. I love throwing cliffhangers at the end of a chapter. In fact, in my 5th book, I literally have a literal cliffhanger. I have a character. His name is Theron. He has been hunted down by this military guy, this captain of a ship. This captain follows him out of the country, up into the Arctic, and he is trying to capture him. And they get into a fight on the beach. That fight takes them further inland onto a glacier, and Theron tricks the captain into trying to stab him while he's standing on the edge of a cliff. Come to find out, it wasn't even Theron. Theron actually tackles him, and they literally go off the edge of the cliff, and they're hanging on, and an avalanche happens. And that's where it ends. That avalanche. And then it cuts to the next scene, and it jumps back to somewhere else, dealing with other characters, other situations. It keeps readers invested. Let's see where we're going. Okay. All right. Number 8. An exciting climax. Thrillers build towards one big, exciting moment. A big reveal. The hero's final obstacle. Whatever that is. This is where the reader learns all of the remaining info that's been kept secret. So for Ocean's 11, it's how they broke into the vault, how they stole the money, and how they got away with it, and what they did with the money. All right? And really, they never actually broke into the vault. What they did is they showed a recording of them breaking into a fake vault and stealing fake money. And the SWAT team that they sent in, that they called in to get the thieves, was actually the thieves themselves who were escorted in, walked right into the vault, and walked away with their service bags filled with cash. Millions of dollars of cash. And they never actually had to break in. All they had to do was project a video of them breaking in. Big exciting climax. The big exciting climax of Jurassic Park is the T-Rex coming in, saving the day against the Velociraptors. Everybody who's still survived is getting away, and they're leaving the island peacefully with some post-traumatic stress disorder, of course. Okay? John McClane. He saves his wife from Hans Gruber. Hans falls out of a window. He dies. And John McClane gets to kiss the girl. Every time you have a thriller, the climax should end with this big, exciting moment. There needs to be a catharsis of emotion. Whatever fear, whatever suspense, whatever stress, whatever anxiety has been building throughout the course of the story, it needs to come to an end. The question is how you choose to end it. You could do a twist ending. Take a look at something like a supernatural thriller like The Sixth Sense. And the movie's been out for more than 20 years, so spoiler alert. There's clues all throughout the film that indicate Bruce Willis was dead the entire time. It's not that big of a stretch. When you go back and you rewatch it, like there are scenes where he is being lit from another angle. His shadow does not cross the wall. There's a scene where he is standing in front of a mirror. You see no reflection. Why? Because he's a ghost. Ghosts do not cast shadows. Ghosts do not have reflections. He wears variations of the same outfit through the entire film. It never changes. He might take off the tie, or he might take off the jacket, or his overcoat. He never changes clothes the entire time, and you don't pay attention. What's also really fun is every time you see the color red in that movie, it's an indication that there's a ghost nearby. Yeah, James?
Couldn't he be a vampire?
No, the movie's about ghosts. And a boy who can see dead people. It's not about vampires.
That's why I said couldn't.
No, can't be. It's about ghosts. Because if it's a vampire, he still casts a shadow. Know your mythology, bud. All right, 7 tips for writing thrillers. And I'll go through these quickly because I want to get to the actual writing portion of the writing workshop. Number 1, choose locations that, I keep stepping on that. Choose locations that intrigue and excite you. You're the one who's writing. The right location can provide inspiration and shape the course of your story, providing answers to plotting problems. Treat a location like you would a character. Locations have meaning. Where you set a story point or a plot point, whether it's an action set piece or something else, that will inform your character's decisions. But you need to know the geography of that location. And I don't just mean like, does it have mountains or rivers or a valley or anything like that. If you're talking about like a plaza in a city or a specific city block or a specific neighborhood, know the layout of that area. Okay? I have been working on a project since college where the very first story takes place in London, and the main character is standing on top of a roof trying to shoot someone coming out of a church. Okay, the scene takes place in London. I had to find a church that matches that description. perfectly. I found it. And it fits, but I had to spend, after I wrote the story was fine, but to make it more believable, to make it more real, I had to spend time studying the entire layout of the neighborhood surrounding this church in London to make sure that I knew the side streets, to make sure I knew the geography of the buildings, how a character was going to get up onto a building, stuff like that. Okay? I have to treat it like a character. I have to know all the ins and outs. Yes?
What's the church called?
I don't remember this point. I haven't looked at that part of the story in a couple of years. Number 2, make promises to your reader. This is part of that contract that we talked about earlier. It tells the reader, I know something that you don't, but I promise to tell you if you keep reading. This is where you introduce the sole dramatic question up front. Then you spend the rest of the story unpacking the answers. That sole question could be, what would happen if 11 guys broke into a casino vault and stole $16 million? That question could be, what would happen if a team of scientists on a remote jungle island developed clone dinosaurs and introduced them to people? Okay? That question could be, what happens if you have a gigantic shark swimming around Martha's Vineyard for a weekend during 4th of July? Maybe it's a better question. What happens if you have a law firm who should be supporting the law, breaking it, and doing everything they can to hide their corruption? What happens if you have a rogue Soviet submarine commander taking an experimental new boat out on its maiden voyage, and he goes radio silent? Those are the questions that get asked in Jurassic Park, Jaws, The Hunt for Red October, and so many others. So if you're going to write a thriller, start with the question before you do anything else. Tip number 3, introduce parallel plot lines. Subplots for villains and secondary characters create more places for suspense and raise questions in the reader's mind about how everything is related. One of the best things that they do in the film Die Hard is that we get quite a bit of time. We get quite a bit of time with Hans Gruber and the things that he is doing. We see all the minutia of his plans being laid out. It starts asking the question, why is he here? Why Nakatomi Plaza? How did he get such easy access? Who's helping him? How is John McClane going to stop him? Is Hans Gruber going to find out that John McClane's wife is in this group of people working at Nakatomi Plaza? Because he eventually does. And we eventually get all of those answers. But these run on parallel plot lines. Because for the majority of the film, John McClane is by himself. There is a point midway through the movie where he and Hans Gruber have a conversation. Hans is pretending to be an American. He's pretending to be a partygoer who escaped the terrorists. And when he's walking around with a gun, and when he first sees John McClane, his first instinct is he pretends to be scared and crying, and he freaks out thinking that John McClane is the terrorist. He's like, I'm not a terrorist, I'm a cop. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they start having a conversation. They smoke a cigarette together. They get to know each other a little bit better. But then Hans accidentally lets something slip. Parallel plot lines converge. And then they dovetail for just a moment, and they split apart as John has to go running again. And then they dovetail back together towards the end. Tip number 4, give characters complicated histories. Withhold information and keep the reader guessing about the dark secrets in someone's past and how they might affect that character's behavior today. I'm actually going to pivot on Die Hard. I'm going to talk about Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is the third film in that franchise. In Die Hard with a Vengeance, we are introduced to a character named Simon. Okay? We do not know why Simon is doing this. All we know is that he speaks with a German accent. He is blowing up buildings in New York City in one of the hottest summers on record. He is just lighting up these bombs. And he is sending all these riddles to the NYPD, and he specifically wants John McClane to answer these riddles and to go on his chase and figure out all these different puzzles. And all these puzzles lead to other bombs. Sometimes. Sometimes they're not really bombs, they just look like bombs. It's not until about maybe halfway through that we get the reveal that Simon, his full name is Simon Peter Gruber. And that John McClane threw his big brother off a building in Los Angeles just a few years before. And what's interesting is, towards the end of the film, John and Simon get into a conversation. Simon's got him dead to rights. He's got him strapped to a bomb. And they have a conversation, and John actually says, your brother was kind of an a-hole. And Simon's like, yeah, he kind of was. But he was still my brother. So you have these moments where the characters have complicated histories. And it's a great opportunity to build off of previous histories, especially if you have multiple entries in the series. Tip number 5, compress the timeline. A shortened timeline puts the characters under more pressure, and this effect on characters can be immense, resulting in tension, jump-starting a struggling story. This goes back to the clock. Okay? You compress that timeline. Jurassic Park takes place over the course of a day, maybe 2. Take a look at Die Hard. It takes place over the course of one evening. While you have several weeks of planning and preparation in Ocean's 11 for a crime thriller, really the biggest issue is that the ending happens all in one night. They have one night to get everything done. Jaws happens over the course of the 4th of July weekend. Look, Chief Brody is under the gun. The mayor of Amity is telling him he has to get rid of the shark before the beaches are flooded with tourists and visitors and vacationers for the holiday weekend. And it just gets worse. Like, they think the shark has been killed because a big tiger shark was killed by some fishermen. That's not the fish. And they're going to need a bigger boat. But there's an additional time crunch that happens in Jaws. And that is when Quint's boat starts sinking because it got damaged by the shark. And the longer they are in over their head with the water, the closer they get to the shark's mouth. The point where Quint actually gets eaten. Tip number 6, practice pacing. You don't want to rush it, but you also don't want it to drag. Constantly gauge an imaginary reader's reaction to your pacing. Will they be bored because you've gone off on a tangent? Or are they going to be frustrated that you're not revealing enough? Or are they going to be let down because you info-dumped? That's a big thing in thrillers. You have information that the reader wants. You don't want to divvy it out too quickly. You don't want to give it out too slowly. There's a perfect balance of how much information you give and when you give it and how.
Sound like a dangling carrot?
It is. But a dangling carrot stops being helpful when your horse dies of starvation. Don't let your reader die of figurative starvation. Give them little nibbles of that carrot here and there so that they are still invested and still involved in the story. Tip number 7. Read a lot of thrillers. Read everything from spy thrillers to crime thrillers and everything in between, and see how they apply the 8 crucial elements mentioned earlier. See how they apply the anatomy that we talked about, the 3 C's. Reading is breathing in. Writing is breathing out. So if you want to write a good thriller, you're going to want to read good thrillers. Even if they're bad thrillers, like I said, I'm not a fan of James Patterson. I don't care for the way that he farms out stories to other writers. I think he puts out a lot of stories in a really fast amount of time. Great, and he's working with some talented people that are trying to get their foot in the door. But I don't like the fact that he tacks his name onto it when he only came up with an idea and someone else is fleshing out the characters. Someone else is doing the story for him. That's just me. All right, but if you're going to write sci-fi, you want to read sci-fi. If you're going to write horror, you need to read horror. If you're going to write thrillers, you need to read thrillers. Whatever it is that you want to write, breathe it in by reading, breathe it out by writing. And you're only going to get better with practice. Because, James, how do we get to Carnegie Hall? With practice. All right, so here we go.
What is Carnegie Hall?
Carnegie Hall is like one of the biggest, most prestigious performance halls in the world. It's in New York. All right, so final thoughts, 7 things to know. Start with a moment of change. Something that's going to change your characters' lives or their perspectives. You need to know what's at stake for your characters. Whatever the consequences are, good or bad, you need to know that. Ensure your readers care about the characters. If you don't care about the characters, your readers aren't. Okay? Gradually increase suspense. You want to ratchet up that tension. You want to ratchet up the suspense as much as you can. Don't do it too suddenly, because then it's going to feel flat. You want it to have some growth. Give a little bit of think about the idea of what James Patterson said about being a roller coaster. Roller coasters have twists, they have turns, they have drops, they have inclines. Okay? Those are your emotional beats that you need to increase. The suspense, the biggest amount of suspense, is when the roller coaster is climbing that first incline. That first drop is your first catharsis. That's the opening. Make limitations work for you. If there's a limitation about a location or a character or anything else, make it work for you. You want to build to the climax. Everything should be scaling upwards towards that climax. Little dips here and there, but mostly scaling upward. Everything else should be coasting downhill at the very end. And then ensure that your ending is satisfying. Okay? I have read some books. They had a great premise. There was some decent suspense. But the ending was total garbage. Okay? I've never read through the book series, but I've watched through the films. Twilight is a great example of an ending that falls flat. It builds towards this huge war between vampires and werewolves and Cullens fighting for their family and stuff like that. And at the very end, we find out the whole thing was a dream. That right there is a big slap in the face to any audience, because you had all this stuff ratcheting up and building to the tension, and the whole thing was just a vision. So 30, 40 minutes worth of screen time, and the films that had preceded that are eaten up by all this build-up for nothing. Don't let it fall flat. Make sure the ending is satisfying. If you want to gauge for satisfaction, have someone read your work. Beta readers are a great way to do that. In fact, I have a buddy of mine based in New Jersey. He has a couple of books out in a thriller series called, it's an action thriller, crime thriller series called The Circle. The first book is called The Circle, the second book is called Legends of the Circle. And it takes place, it's kind of a prequel. I'm really hoping he gets to work on book 3 because I want to read it. I got to help though with being a beta reader on Legends in the Circle, and there's some things that I thought, hey, this might be a really great thing to add in as a pacing guide, or here's how you can make this more climactic. In fact, because there's things that are tied into the end of the first book and the end of Legends of the Circle, and I said, hey, I've got a great idea for a title. He's like, what's that? I said, Closing the Circle. Because or bring things back full circle. Because of the characters that involve and the decisions that they've made. So make sure the ending is satisfying and have people read your work to give you some feedback. So here we go. Here's your writing prompt. Set your story in a world where everyone's decisions are made for them. Okay, it's going to feel more science fiction. One morning, your character wakes up and chooses not to go to work. Wait a minute. They choose? They're not supposed to choose. The decisions are made for them. They're supposed to go to work. There you go. 250 words. You've got 10 minutes. James. For those of you who have been joining us online, thank you. You guys can see the prompt and see you in the ether.